Let's try this again, shall we? I'd like to pretend that every single idea I ever had was incredibly original, but that would be very true, if I'm honest with you. I was watching Bertie Gilbert's video on cartoons from his childhood, especially ones from like Cartoon Network, and he talked very much about how it was influential for him at a young age in those sort of stories that they were telling. And it got me thinking, what other times were very influential for certain generations? And the one that immediately sprang to my mind was the 7 p.m. on a Saturday night time slot. If you didn't grow up in the UK, you're probably not too familiar with the types of shows that were on at that time. They were big fantasy sci-fi shows, family shows that were designed to do Hollywood-level ideas on a tiny little British TV budget. And I remember talking to people in the playground at school about all of these shows while they were going on, and their adaptations of Robin Hood, Atlantis, The Three Musketeers at one point. But there were three main shows that ruled the roost when it came to this time slot, and those were Doctor Who, Merlin, and Primeval. If you enjoyed this video, press the like button and subscribe for more. Doctor Who arguably created this entire genre of Saturday night drama when it came back in 2005, being rebooted by Russell T Davies. Now, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that I didn't actually watch a lot of Doctor Who until Matt Smith was the Doctor. I think I watched the David Tennant episode where they're in the future and there's the people with the plague, and that just scared me, and I couldn't bring myself to watch it after that. But a few years later, I watched the whole thing all the way through, from Christopher Eccleston to the end of Peter Capaldi's run as the Doctor, and I gotta say, a lot of it still stands up really well. The 2005 through to 2009 period of Doctor Who is probably the most iconic for people my age who grew up watching David Tennant as the Doctor. He arguably had some of the most famous Doctor Who stories ever told, stuff like The Family of Blood, Doomsday, and Blink. Because my god, people would not stop talking about that when that came out. I think for me personally, my favourite part of David Tennant's run is Series 4, with Donna Noble, played by Catherine Tate, as his companion.
Cocktail shaker, what do you want, a Harvey Wallbanger? Harvey Wallbanger!
For me, it feels like that point that the production crew had done the show 3 times already at this point, that the 4th time was now they perfected the writing, the production design, the cinematography, the performances. All of that had been set in stone, and so when you watch all those episodes, they're really consistently good, really good stuff. You've got episodes like The Fires of Pompeii, The Unicorn and the Wasp, The Sontaran Arc, and then you get to the final 2 episodes and they cross over every show that Russell T Davies has managed to create in the Doctor Who universe. Up until that point, you get the Torchwood people, you get Sarah Jane, you get Martha Jones coming back with the unit. Marvel eat your heart out. And obviously it all changes when Matt Smith comes in as the Doctor and Stephen Moffat takes over as head writer of the show. It was different, and I think people were turned off by that, but I still think Series 5 is one of the best series as a Doctor Who that they ever made. Obviously, as the show goes on, it gets more complicated, and I feel like it sort of loses its way a bit. But then you get to Peter Capaldi's era, and it's not quite the same anymore. When you get to Series 10, which is Peter Capaldi's last series, however, something changes. I feel like Stephen Moffat finally knew how to write a good series of Doctor Who. I don't know if it's because it was his last run and he went whatever, or if these are ideas that he'd had for a while that he never got to make because the BBC wanted it to be a certain way. But yeah, like, if you haven't seen Peter Capaldi's last series as the Doctor, I'd highly recommend. It stands on its own incredibly well. But during the off seasons of Doctor Who, the BBC did need something to try and fill that Saturday night gap, and that's when they created Merlin. Now, this is a show that stuck really rigidly to the Adventure of the Week format that Doctor Who had sort of perfected by this point, and I think it suffers just a little bit for that. I rewatched it before making this video, and it was really hard to watch consistently all the way through, to binge it, as it were. A lot of the episodes do end up sort of repeating themselves, and you feel like you've watched something before. It's definitely designed to be watched one-off every week, but it is still a really fun show. I think the thing that keeps it all held together, the core of it, is the relationship between Merlin and Arthur themselves. Colin Morgan and Bradley James have really good chemistry together, and it's honestly the best part of the series is seeing these two trying to just figure out their way through the world. And if you're going to get anyone to voice a dragon, you're going to get John Hurt to do it. I could listen to that man read the phone book, to be honest with you. Do people still use phone books? I don't think people use phone books anymore. It's a shame, because this show promises a lot about the legend of King Arthur, and they introduce elements of it such as the Knights of the Round Table, but they never actually really deliver on finally seeing that legend come to life on the screen, as it were. And the series ends up falling a little bit flat by the end, which is a shame, because there's genuinely some good stuff in there. You could tell they didn't quite have the budget they needed for what they were trying to do, because anytime anyone uses magic, it's literally just to push people with their minds. That and the occasional potion that changes their age. Although I do think the best thing about this show is Old Man Merlin. He's just funny. I just really enjoy it any time he was on screen.
What would you know about the king and my dumplings?
Oh, good grief. Should have done that years ago.
You know, the BBC wasn't the only channel trying to make these large-scale dramas. There was ITV, the other channel that was also trying its best, and its flagship show was Primeval. Now, if you know me even a little bit, you know I don't shut up about this show. I adore it. I love it. I actually run another YouTube channel about Primeval called Primeval Legacy, so if you want to check that out, the link for that will be in the description. A lot of people call this ITV's Doctor Who, which I think is an incredibly unfair assessment. It honestly resembles more Torchwood than anything else. It's about a team of government agents who have to tackle holes in time called anomalies, and out of the holes come dinosaurs, and oh, is it messy sometimes when that happens. And when people think of the show, they probably remember the creatures first, but for me it was always about the characters. The main guy being Nick Cutter, played by Scottish actor Douglas Henshall. Honestly, the older I get, the more I understand him. He's constantly tired, no one understands what he's going on about half the time, and his ex-wife keeps screwing him over. In all seriousness though, I think Nick was a compelling character to watch on screen because he just couldn't catch a break. He thinks his wife is dead, only for her to come back after travelling through time for 8 years with no apology. He finds out that before she went gallivanting into the Permian period, his best friend had an affair with her. Then he accidentally creates a new evolutionary timeline, deleting his new girlfriend from existence, only for her to come back as a completely different woman who he doesn't really like. Then his best friend sacrifices himself out of guilt for being a gaslit himbo, and just as he's starting to make things work with the new version of his love interest, his wife kills him. Spoilers. I think the other most iconic character from the show was Connor Temple, played by Andrew Lee Potts. And what more can I say about this lovable geek than style icon? The waistcoat, the fingerless gloves, and the fedora. He definitely defined a lot of 11-year-olds' sense of style after that, for better or for worse. But I think the main draw that got people watching every week was the creatures, and boy, did this show deliver on that. You had the Silurian scorpions, the Columbian mammoth, the Gorgonopsid, the raptors in the shopping centre. That's just iconic. But the one creature that stands head and shoulder above all of those is, of course, the future predator. Because this thing is a piece of creature design perfection. If you were to theorise what the next dominant species on planet Earth, once humans disappear, might be, chances are it's going to be a mammal, and chances are it'd probably therefore be a bat or a rat, considering they make up 3/4 of all mammal species. And so they took this idea and they ran with it and created this echolocating monstrosity. The predators became Primeval's Daleks, and they showed up in nearly every series. When you get to series 5, they show up as these horrible zombie-like mutated versions of themselves, and they're quite horrific. But then unfortunately after that we never see them again because the show was cancelled. And it's not just Primeval that disappeared. After that, Saturday night drama just wasn't a thing. Merlin finished the year after Primeval, and the only show actually still standing is Doctor Who. I think as streaming services became more popular and the golden age of television was ushered in at the beginning of the 2010s, I think companies and people started focusing more on serialised storytelling. So will we ever see a return to the Adventure of the Week single episode format ever again? Well, I'd argue we kind of already have. Perhaps the biggest show on the planet right now, The Mandalorian, has proved that you can make something on a week-to-week basis where each episode is a mini-adventure that doesn't necessarily forward the plot in a significant way every week. Not only that, streaming, while making time slots and airing dates less relevant, has allowed shows that would have never seen the light of day to be created. I don't know how many Doctor Who's, Merlins or Primevals probably didn't get put into production because they weren't seen as a valuable investment. Nowadays, Netflix and Amazon Prime are throwing money at things, so I don't see a reason for shows like this to not return. And while we may never again sit down on a Saturday night to watch David Tennant run away from some horrifically CGI monster, I think the spirit of the week-to-week adventure is still out there. I guess we'll just have to tune in next week to see what happens. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, press the like button. It really helps me out. If you want to see more, subscribe, leave a comment. Do you want me to talk about more Saturday night shows, or do you want me to go more in depth with the shows I've already talked about? But thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.